Welcome back to the Remote No Pressure Podcast, Bill.
Well, hello. Welcome back, Bill. I'm sorry. I totally lost it there. It's good to be back.
It is great to be back, Bill. I've got my hat on backwards. I haven't worn my hat on backwards since 1998. 98. That's year I graduated high school. That's the last time I wore my hat on backwards. Were you a backwards hat wearer back in the day?
I wasn't a hat wearer in the 90s. I had bigger flowing hair and I just never wore hats. In the late 90s, early 90s, I wore hats.
But when I think of big flowing hair, did you ever see that movie Weird Science?
Yep.
Where they make the girl?
Yep.
Yeah, when she had all the hair and it's...
Yep.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, it was.
Especially coming of age.
Yep.
And you're like, oh my God, she's hot. That was. I haven't. What was your favorite movie from the 80s? I mean, obviously Goonies.
Yeah, I was gonna say Goonies. That's like the classic.
But I was thinking that there were some great movies.
Stand By Me. That was a good one.
Dude,
I didn't realize that was a Stephen King flick.
Yeah, it's after his book, The Body. Mm-hmm. That was a killer movie, dude.
Yeah, it was.
My wife, I was talking to her about it, and she'd never seen it. She's 5 years older than me, so she was really a 90s kid, and we were talking about that movie. She's like, I don't want to watch it, a bunch of boys and blah blah. It's kind of gross. And then we watched it, and she's like, holy cow, that was a great movie.
Yep.
I'll never forget the vomit scene though.
Nope. No,
what
was that dude's name they were making fun of? I can never remember this. Like, I want to say Large something, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's been probably 20 years since I've watched that movie too.
And when you have kids, my kids aren't with me, but you're more sensitive to all the swearing.
Yep.
And you're like, wow, there was a lot of swearing in that movie.
Yeah.
Those kids swore a lot. But there was a lot of swearing
and
in those
I remember the
movies.
Body, like that haunted me. Because I was like 6 when that movie came out. So I remember seeing The Body in that movie. Just like that being seared into my memory as a kid.
But that was rated R, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Your parents let you watch a rated... But see, back then the ratings were different.
It was probably PG-13.
We've talked about this. Like the movie Airplane has breast in it.
Yep.
That was PG.
Yeah,
the movie Airplane.
Was PG or G?
No, it was PG.
PG, okay.
PG. The Goonies has a lot of swearing in it because I tried to watch that with my boys. We watched it, but the dude talks about the cocaine and when he's talking to the maid. Mouth was talking to her like the cocaine is hidden here. There's my boys. I'm like, oh crap, it's too late now.
We're invested.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh.
Don't tell your mother.
But movies were harsher back then with lower ratings. It seemed like.
Yep.
I remember my parents like, you can't watch anything over PG, until you're over 13 or whatever. Now it's like, but those PG movies
now
look at
what it did to society too. They lower the they make the kids softer by not exposing them to all that stuff. You know what I mean?
You think so?
I think so. That's what I'm going with.
Do you think kids need to swear a little more?
Damn it, yes.
I'll tell you a funny story. My boys were out this past summer and the windows were up, and we don't let our kids swear, obviously, but our neighbors had their windows up and my two boys, they got into a fight and my oldest, I think it's my youngest or my oldest goes, I effing hate you. Went crazy because he got so mad. He dropped an F-bomb. He dropped this F-bomb so loud. And we're like, oh my gosh, the neighbors probably think we're just like horrible parents. I'm like, where did you learn that? But actually the first time we were fishing on the flat, I think I told you that story, underneath the bridge, and someone had spray painted the F word underneath the bridge. And that's when my son was like, what does that mean, Dad? I'm like, I don't know. Look the other way.
Well, they get worse than that on YouTube, though, too.
Dude, they do. There's some stuff on YouTube the other day. I was sitting here working on last night on some R&P stuff, and I heard GD come out of one of the movies on shows on YouTube. It was like a kid's show. I'm like, no.
Yep.
You got to be careful with that stuff, man.
Yep.
It's some crazy stuff that.
And that's all pretty unrated, too, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
It's like the Wild West still as far as that goes.
Yeah. So, and then what they hear at school, there's no telling.
Yeah, those teachers.
Those teachers. My son does have a teacher, one particular teacher that I can tell she's probably pretty harsh, some of the stories he tells. And, my son is no saint. He's in 6th grade. He's a boy. He plays with his friends. So I take some of it with a grain of salt. But there's sometimes the teachers that, especially if they don't have kids or they're not used to work, they're newer, they just kind of overreact. And when boys see that, they double down and agitate, you know what I mean? But he told me how mean she was. The teacher's mean. And, we have parent-teacher conference with her. she's so sweet and so nice to us. And I'm thinking, I can see through this. I think you are a lot harsher than you're putting on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So she's probably a lot harsher than she's putting on, and she's probably not nearly as harsh as my son says she is. But I had some teachers. And did you ever get pops in school? Like spanking?
Oh, I thought you meant here's a Coke. You're very good.
In a Ziploc bag from last week's episode. No, but did you ever?
No, we didn't. I heard stories of a band director throwing his stool against the wall so it would shatter all the time, and just to shake people up to make them pay attention. But no, I never got hit. I never got spanked in school.
Oh.
I got it from my folks.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, I got spanked. I grew up in Texas, right? Mrs. Sanders, 2nd grade, and she gave me pops on my butt one time. 2nd grade.
Wow.
I would never want a teacher to raise their hand.
87, 88, somewhere in there?
Yeah, And then my parents sent me to Christian school one time. I got popped by Mrs. Atkins. She was probably 350 pounds, but her name was Mrs. Atkins, which I think is funny now with the Atkins diet. Because I wasn't around then. And she was probably 350 pounds. I mean, she was huge. And so I don't know what I did. I can't remember what I did, but I remember going into this darkish room. And you can't really see her face, and I can probably remember because you don't remember things.
It may not have even been her.
No, no, it was her, believe me. And she had this wooden paddle, and she made me bend over, and she gets her weight. She would get her weight behind it. Woo! It was, and I was in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. It was I would never let anyone do that to my kids.
Now it's illegal, I think.
Oh, it should be. It should be. I don't know though. Texas is.
But I'm Texas in favor of the ruler across the knuckles. I think that's okay. The Catholics had that down. Yeah.
The Catholics, along with purgatory and the threat of hell. But this.
No, the Catholics took that away.
Really?
Yeah.
There's no more hell?
No, the Pope said. I think the Pope was saying that there's no hell. This Pope has changed it all up.
Wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't even know where to go with that. But
anyways,
this week in other news. CIA. What does CIA stand for?
Central Intelligence Agency.
Releases entire collection of UFO-related documents to truth-seeking website. The Black Vault documents cover everything from mysterious Russian explosions to top government officials being hand-delivered UFO intel. More than 3 decades worth of government UFO records are now yours to download and peruse, thanks to the efforts of some intrepid truth seekers. The massive data dump includes more than 2,700 pages of UFO-related documents declassified by the CIA since the 1980s. The government also calls them unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP. An online repository, not suppository, but repository of UFO-related documents operated by author Greenwald Jr., the documents were obtained through a long string of Freedom of Information Act requests filed in the last quarter century. So that's pretty interesting that that's declassified. Now, before we came on the air, you had mentioned something.
When is this from, by the way?
This is actually from a day ago.
Okay, There we go. See, we were just talking about before we came on the air how the latest stimulus bill that gave us all a $600 stimulus check. Trump actually snuck a little, what do they call that? Those little, everybody's got their I'll vote for this, but you got to
pork or whatever. Yeah.
So Trump stuck one in there to declassify all UFO related files in the next 6 months. So I wonder if this is part of that. That dump.
Couldn't he declassify the other stuff? Isn't there more interesting things to declassify? Like
Bigfoot?
Like JFK?
He kind of did though. Did you not see that data
when he
dump
first
in
started?
2018 somewhere in there?
Yeah.
And talked about that there was a second shooter?
Oh, there's more than 2. You've seen the rich man's
bits of it, yeah.
I can't say the name because we'll get
YouTube. We'll get the YouTube problems.
Anyways, email me directly if you want to find out that information.
If you want to go down that rabbit trail.
But yeah, so like I said, but when we started here, please go down below and click on subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to also check out our online store at remotenopressure.com for some sweet, sexy shirts like the one I have on right now, the Leave No Trace shirt. Speaking of, last week we talked about the top 12 places or 25 places to fish. We're going to
Have
talk.
you been to any of them
Since when?
since our last week episode? I mean, it can't really do it here in Michigan, but I mean,
No.
been traveling.
But this week we're going to be talking about another river in northern Michigan called the Jordan with Brian Kozminski. There's a campaign going on with the DNR and some stuff that's going down. So we are really focusing on Michigan the next few weeks just because this is our home state, and we're wanting to focus on that. So Koz is going to come on and talk about his main river on the Jordan. There's a link below down where you can click and sign. You can sign below if you would like to not contribute to the cause, but sign to help the cause. So be sure to go to change.org at the link down below. And welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Well, welcome back to the Remote No Pressure podcast. Very excited to have Michigander Brian Kozminski hanging out with me. How you doing, Brian?
I am excellent. How are you doing?
Good. I just actually talked to my friend this week. He's a financial advisor here in town. And he goes, man, when we lost touch, he finally gets back in touch with me. He says, when are you going to take me fishing? I said, anytime, we'll go fishing. And he goes, I heard you fly fish a lot, and I really want to go fishing. And I was like, well, let's go. I'm down with whatever. He goes, yeah, I've only fly fished one time. And he goes, I went up to the Jordan River with this guy. I can't remember his name. It was Brian or something. I said, Koz? He goes, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, Koz, he's the man up there. So it was kind of cool that you were able to expose him. His name's David Brower. I don't know if you know him or not, but
yes, I do.
Yeah.
I can probably pull him up in my books. Yep.
Yeah. So he had a great time with you. I had a great time on the Jordan River. Me and accountant Phil came up to do the Hex a couple summers ago. It made the ridiculous decision not to take off work the next day.
Right.
But what a great! I mean, fishing that Hex.
You guys drove home that night, or at least went halfway.
When you say you guys, you mean accountant Phil drove home that night,
right? Yeah. Exactly.
He's about 5 years younger than me, so I just let him drive, I guess.
Still, it's that 2:00 in the morning and the headlights in your face, and there's only so much coffee and Red Bull you can do in a day.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, even the time I came up with Drew Nelson, me, you, and Drew went out for his birthday. We got off the river really late. And I remember me and Drew, we both stopped at McDonald's at the same time, that one McDonald's there, and just kind of looked at each other red-eyed like, oh, crap, we got a long ways to go.
Right?
But
That's funny.
But the Jordan River is a magical river, being on there with you, having a meal as the sun goes down, waiting for that Hex to hatch. I mean, what a magical place. How long have you been guiding there on the actual Jordan?
10 years.
Wow.
Because even before, when we would come up here to see Leslie's family, that's one of the best little trout streams you could access, that or the Maple. And the Maple's like the big hush-hush secret. But, coming from Grand Rapids, we'd love to fish brook trout. And how many brook trout streams do you have in your neck of the woods?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not very many. And up here, they're by the dozens. And it's also one of the biggest, best trophy brown trout fisheries around, and I think the secret is how cold that water is all year long. Yeah,
well, we had last week's episode was the top 25 trout towns in the United States, and Grayling was on there, and we talked a little bit about the Asable and the PM on that episode. But the Jordan doesn't seem to get as much love as those two. Would you say the Jordan is just as good or just as grand or even better than those two, or just different?
It's way worse. It has nothing.
Horrible.
No, it's good in its own sense. And that's why in any of the old books that you read about, they refer to the Jordan as the Guides River, because after all the guides got done on the Asable and the Manistee, they had their 1 or 2 week reprieve before, the next hatch, Tricos or whatever, they could come over here and fish because the hatch was always later because of how cold the water temps were. And you can still fish well into July and have bugs hatching on the Jordan River.
Wow.
The fish are a little bit wiser and a little bit more sated from all the bugs they've been eating, but they're still there. And it's it's mousing time, it's hex time, it's a whole bunch of good times.
Now, are they native browns? Are they native brookies? Are they stocked brookies? Is it a mix of both? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the fish?
The brook trout, they believe the Jordan River was one of the few lower peninsula rivers that always had brook trout. And they even think that the brook trout that might be in the Asable were brought over from the Jordan River.
Oh, wow.
And that's not documented. Some people think the Boardman had brook trout too, but there's other articles that prove otherwise and that they were brought over. A lot of debate on that. We know that the UP is the primary brook trout range, but northern lower Michigan, and it would probably start right around where the Jordan Valley comes in off of the Gaylord Plateau as it drops down, just because it's cold water all year long, spring fed. Well, makes for great brook trout habitat.
Absolutely.
The browns are not native, and we get a good mix of lake run browns out of Lake Charlevoix, the big boys that come in. One of my buddies boated a 30-incher one night, and there's, Bill Bellinger goes in there and he's got addresses and he knows where they're all at, and he treats them like family. He knows exactly whose fish is where and whether they're playing or not. That's part of the game. Just go out and find addresses.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. So are they coming in like those big lake runs? Are they coming in like in November, like spawning time, or what?
You will see large 25 to 30-inch fish coming in right at the end of October into November after most of the salmon season, and they're using some of the same reds that the salmon use. And I've seen browns use the same red over and over again. So that's every time you see a red doesn't mean it's a new fish, or it doesn't mean. A lot of reds can be reused, just like birds reuse other nests. Mm-hmm. Fish will reuse other areas because that's where the prime gravel is.
Right. It's also is it about efficiency too? Why reinvent it? I mean, they're smart enough to park themselves somewhere to do their business.
Yeah, and it's got the right flow, it's got the right oxygen, it's got the right protection, overhead from predation. It's got a lot of factors that a lot of people don't take into consideration.
For sure.
But it's a short river system, under 30 miles long. It doesn't take long for a salmon or a steelhead to get into it and get to where they need to go. I would say the same thing for the browns, besides the fact that if they come from Lake Michigan, they go all the way through Lake Charlevoix, they've just added another 20 miles to their trek, but still, well, they've got nothing but time as well, so they're just coming in, right?
Right. Now, one of the reasons
I think that the Andromeda's fishery, the coho, it has a non-stocked native producing coho fishery and a partially stocked steelhead fishery. Those two, it gets frustrating for us in the summertime. Sometimes when we're dry fly fishing, you catch a lot of these little 5 or 6 inch either steelhead or coho smolt, but those 5 or 6 inch coho are also exactly what helped make the brown trout fishery a trophy brown trout fishery. Those guys are snacking on those little baby steelhead and salmon as well.
Aha, okay. That totally makes sense. So what patterns, do you use a pattern that stimulates one of those or simulates?
Yeah, almost any little... The double deceiver in the cotton candy looks like a baby rainbow, baby steelhead, but I think a lot of your smaller streamers, the shimmer minnow or anything like that just has that sparkly shine as it's going through the water, it gets the attention of the bigger predatory fish. And sometimes I don't think it's a matter of matching the color or matching the fish. You're just keying in on that fish's instinct to chase and eat. So...
yeah.
But again, you've seen the river and you know how much wood is in there. And once you get into a big fish, that's the first part of the battle.
For sure. Absolutely. Now you just bought a place. I mean, it's a lodge that you're getting together for your clients. Is that up on the Jordan, or where's that particular place?
I've been looking for a number of years. My wife and I, we thought about the Jordan for a long time, but it's not very river friendly with kids. And I don't mean that it's not safe. I just mean that the Manistee has much more open, wider, sandy areas so the kids can actually canoe and kayak and play in the water, and we can have more of a family time.
Okay.
So I've been looking on the Manistee from Yellow Trees down, actually looking at some state land and hopefully buying something and building something, but with the cost of lumber in the past year. And,
yeah,
we found a cute little place and we're going to do some remodeling. It's great. It's on a great, beautiful bend. It's a high bank. I imagine you and I will have a couple days having coffee, sitting up there watching some bugs rise.
Sure.
And part of this whole COVID thing too, it gives me a place to meet clients, like you said, host people for different events. And since we're not doing fly shows as a TFO rep, we have to start thinking about different ways that we can have rod demos and casting demos and have you come up and other dealers come up and be able to cast a rod and maybe go fish that same weekend. I think we have to reinvent the wheel on how we're doing business, period. And that's another one of those big struggles with 2020.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever have the shows back again, or do you think those are days gone by?
I was just talking with Nick Conklin the other day from TFO, and I was talking with Sam and a couple other buddies. We were fishing last week, and I think the first one that we finally have is going to be such a huge, big, deep relief of, oh my gosh, we get to hang out with our family again. Our long lost brothers of the fly rod or fin and feather. And I think there's going to be a missing demographic because we're going to be losing a few of the older authors and casting instructors. Your 70 plus crowd might not want to travel from California or Montana to be a speaker at an event until obviously everybody gets the vaccine and we can travel without as much concern. But I think that's a long way away. So maybe the first fly show that we have should be like the Gen X and under fly show or something. And I think it'll be a celebrated event. And I think that we need to tie it into like a F3T or the Fly Film Festival and do that in the evening and make it or at least get a free discount. Don't charge $20 and make it out of range for a lot of families. Right. Make it 10 and get a $5 coupon for a free beer later on or something like that, Right.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to that, Kaz. Just a big party, essentially, getting together with our friends that we've missed. Are you a Gen Xer, Kaz? You're not a Gen Xer, are you?
No, I turned 50 on Friday. I don't know what that puts me in, but...
Is it a boomer?
I think I'm at the end of the boomer.
See, I'm an Xer. I'm at the end of the Xer. I was born in 80. So.
I'd have to look it up. I honestly don't know. When I was a kid, we didn't have, did we have labels like that?
No. We were just eating paint. We were just eating paint chips and like watching Price is Right and He-Man.
Drinking out of the hose and watching chips, right? Totally. Gilligan's Island.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it, man.
When Saturday mornings were the only day that you could watch cartoons. They didn't have, He-Man and all that stuff on every day after school.
Right. Yeah, that was it, man.
You had to watch Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers.
There were no cable channels. I mean, that wasn't, a thing.
Yeah,
so
3, 13, 17, and 8. If you were lucky, maybe 41 or something else.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was about the Jordan. What's going on? Are they looking to make some changes? The DNR, are you allowed to speak in that? And we have a link down below. If you guys are following us on YouTube or on any of our channels, you can click on the link below at change.org. We have a link to what's going on exactly on the Jordan, a prized river here in Michigan, where there's very few fish and there's no reason to come up there and fish. But in case you do, you want to know the rules. But what's going on up there, Kaz?
They're proposing going from a type 1, which is above Graves right now, which means last Saturday in April to September 30th, open season, minimum size 7-inch brook trout and 8-inch on the brown trout. They want to move it to a type 2 and a type 3, where both are going to be open. Type 3 is open all year long, and they're going to move that area line up to the fish hatchery on Jordan River Road. but the minimum size limit would be 15 inches on brook trout and brown trout. There's no change in gear restrictions, but the type 2, which would be the further up section, would be minimum size 10-inch brook trout and 12-inch brown trout. And they're hoping that that would produce a better, larger fish on average. You know, like when we go out to Montana or Colorado and we're fishing, and most of the fish that you catch are that 15 to 17 inch range, that's great. And I see a lot of that on the Manistee as well, where they've got a limited creel or a slot limit. But I don't know if the Jordan has that amount of natural reproductivity or fertility with the macroinvertebrates. It's mostly a sanctuary for a lot of the salmon and steelhead. There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate going on, and I don't know if there's enough science behind it. Some of the research has been comparing it to Hunt Creek Club and Milliken Creek over by Canada Creek, and both of those sections were private water, where the Jordan River is mostly public upper stretches. It's because we have the nature trail, the hike that you can do, the 18-mile loop. So it's a totally different river, and it's tough to compare apples to oranges when you have a public river where you and I could bring our kids in there and catch their first brook trout at 8 inches and go grill it on a campfire. But if you just changed your size limit to 15 inches for a minimum size, if I caught a 15-inch brook trout, it would probably be going on the wall.
Right.
I think I've only done that once, and that was, on another river. But I also think that this is step 1 to maybe a 2-step or 3-step process in eventually turning this into a flies only section. And I'm not opposed to that at all either, but every once in a while I throw a panther martin or I throw a rapala as well. And I don't know how well the social aspect would that be accepted in the East Jordan area, because there's a lot of people here that put fish in their freezer and they feed their family.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. The people that live there year round, I mean, they count on that for fish, right? For food, right?
Absolutely.
And
it's a mentality. And once you start throwing out flies only, everybody jumps on you. There goes the elitist Orvis, waiters wearing snobs that want to have everything dry fly casting upstream, blah, 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 blah. But I also see how that the mortality rate difference between a streamer caught fish or a fly caught fish is around 7 or 8%, and a spinner caught fish or a rapala caught fish is around 11 or 12% mortality. So when you start picking apart the artificial versus flies only, you're looking at a 2 or 3% difference, and you're really splitting hairs. So I think avoiding the flies only situation would be advisable in going with an artificial ruling. But the DNR will be looking for comments, and this will become public later on in the year, I'm sure. Last year, this has started a couple years ago. And because of COVID, everybody's been working from home, so there hasn't been a whole lot of process going on with this. Mm-hmm. And we don't even really know if it's stalled or where it's sitting. It's kind of like Congress, everything's in hiatus. But
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah. I was wondering, who are they consulting? I mean, I know they're asking for public comment, but who are the brains behind this operation that are ultimately going to make this decision?
There's a steering committee. There's also the DNR Fisheries Department, and then also involved would be the Friends of the Jordan. So they're spearheading it. There's a lot of other issues going on, because the Friends of the Jordan removed 60 beaver dams over a weekend or two when they had manpower, October of 2019, and that kind of messed up the river a little bit. It released a lot of sediment downstream, and they only had permits to remove. They were given permission to remove 10 or 12 beaver dams, and they had extra time, so they got more work done. the reason behind that was connectivity. And I don't know if brook trout need connectivity because they seem to get through beaver dams just fine. I've seen salmon and steelhead get through beaver dams, but they justified it by saying they saw spawning pairs of brook trout above the beaver dam that was removed. And I said, of course you did, because you just removed all their habitat. They had a 10-foot hole and now it's 2 feet deep and ospreys can get them. So it's debating semantics. And we're also learning too, on the state council, Trout Unlimited is learning that our process and how we remove dams and how we do structures. And we're also referring to the Jordan River, which is the first designated natural and scenic river in the state of Michigan. It's not very natural just to rip out a whole bunch of stuff and let it shake out. Mother Nature has a way of doing that. If it's an old beaver dam, we'll get a good rainstorm, and if it's weak, it will get pushed out and it will make a new channel. But we're learning that we should sequentially, remove beaver dam at point A, wait a week, move downstream, remove beaver dam at point B, wait a week. We're letting all that sediment settle down into the river and letting the river reestablish a channel. But whenever we get volunteers for a work bee, or we have volunteers from here on Pines, we want to do a whole bunch of work real quick, and then we can have a pizza party afterwards, right? I mean, let's get 20 guys together and a whole bunch of crowbars and start pulling stuff apart. It's easy and fun, right? Did I lose you? Are you there?
No, I'm just listening. Can you hear me?
Gotcha. Okay? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Jordan, and I just think that somebody needs to be asking the questions, and people need to know about it.
Yeah. Well, we'll put that link up there so people can check it out, get more details about what's going on, and just hearing the backstory, even reading some of the comments through there, of people's thoughts on the whole thing. So, hopefully they'll listen to reason and they'll be able to make a good decision for everybody. But I noticed that too. It's like, I think it was Yellowstone reintroduced the wolves, right, to the population, and everything kind of flourished, and just seems like sometimes our best ideas to handle nature is not. Sometimes we just need to let it be nature and do its thing.
Sometimes I even wonder could you even imagine if what if 1 year a river wasn't allowed to be fished and the next door neighbor river was fished, and then the opposite year we switched so that every river in the state of Michigan got a break for a year? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We see that sometimes when we have a high water spring, all of a sudden 2 or 3 years later, we see a bang up steelhead run because nobody could get into that river to fish the steelhead. So there was a great natural reproduction. Whereas the opposite will happen with last year because so many people were off during COVID that everybody went fishing for steelhead.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if many steelhead got a chance to reproduce.
Yeah,
who knows?
It's been a very busy year. Speaking to that, there's been a lot of more interest in the sport. I'm hearing a lot of people getting into it. It's becoming more popular, especially during COVID. Do you think the spike in interest is here to stay, or do you think it's gonna go down a little bit once people get back to normal post-COVID vaccination life?
I think eventually it'll notch down a little bit, but I also think too that there's a lot of people that hopefully have found a certain peace or serenity in their backyard, whether it was hiking or bird watching or kayaking or fly fishing, that they realize that we've got all these great treasures in our back door. As a fly rod sales guy, I want now, everybody last year went out and they bought a 5-weight combo. Now I want you to go out next year and buy a 8-weight or buy a 7-weight or buy your next Feed That Addiction. We don't want to see the movie sequel to just stop and drop. We're catching up on production and getting rods into fly shops so that you can get your second fly rod this summer, hopefully, and go discover new water. Maybe if they open up the border, we can go to Canada or jump on an airplane and go fish for bonefish in the Bahamas. I don't know. There's so many things now that it's like we've been grounded. And when I get ungrounded, I'm going to go everywhere and I'm going to do all these things. And we've got these grandiose dreams, but I think it's true though. We're sitting at home right now making a wish list, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah. For me with COVID, the way it's been in Michigan, our restaurants are still closed. I just want to go out with some friends and have a nice dinner and a glass of wine and just enjoy time. I mean, we've invited friends over. We've grabbed takeout, brought it home. It's not the same. It's not the same.
And I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, hairstylist or whomever it was. I was my dermatologist. And I said, I just want to be able to go to the restaurant and walk up to a whole bunch of tables of a whole bunch of different friends I know and say hi, shake hands, and give them a hug.
I know.
We're social creatures by nature, most of us. And, is the Beechwood right down the street from you?
It's not too far. It's there in Holland, the Beechwood.
Yeah, I went there with my mom, and what an awesome place. Great food, great service, great atmosphere. I was very impressed. That's definitely on my top 10 list in the Holland area.
Yeah, Grand Rapids, I moved here in 2002. And, you couldn't get any decent. There was one decent taco place. And there was no barbecue. There wasn't a lot of good food, Now it's beside Beer City. It before COVID, it was foodie city. I mean, there are all kinds of great food and so many different cultural influences. It's like, oh my gosh, every night of the week you could be eating from a different part of the world, So I'm hoping when it opens back up that they survive. I hope that a lot of them survived.
Yes, I love entertaining clients in Grand Rapids. You got Graydon's Crossing and the Greenwell in Easttown and so many Brewery Vivant and of course Founders. And they're just, I don't know how it's going to be tough to get through all this. I think I really hope and pray for a lot of my industry friends.
Yeah, for sure.
But on to brighter, happier notes. Inform your people to check out my YouTube channel. I'm looking for input on what people want to see.
Okay.
And I look to get out with you and other anglers that I've fished with in the past, and we can actually get on the river and talk about different tactics, whether it's tight line nymphing, Euro style, streamer fishing, this or different weight rods, different line rods. I see people arguing all the time about the rod doesn't matter on roll casting. I would say it does, because if you have to have more line out, then the rod isn't doing what the rod's supposed to do in order to load. I think there is no definitive right or wrong answer in a lot of these things. I just think that there's valuable opinions that we all need to share and express.
Right. Well, I tell you what, I just put up a video recently. And what we'll do is, if you're on our YouTube channel or whatever you're listening, click below for a link to Koz's YouTube channel. But one of the things that I noticed, you just posted a video about winter nymphing, was it? Or winter? Yeah.
We were streamer fishing on Sunday, and we moved a couple of really nice fish. I tagged into one that was probably about 24, had him on for a minute, enough to get my line pulled up, and he made one good run. And I must have had him just in some soft tissue, and he came undone, because they usually hit so fast and so hard that you don't think about setting the hook. You're just like, it's on, let's go, Right. And they're post spawn right now, so they're looking to eat something and make it through spring, and they're sitting in some really soft back little sneaky spots that you would never expect big fish to be.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of your videos, Koz, and yeah, I think they're great. I'm really excited about it. If you ever need a cameraman, let me know.
You bet.
Who does your camera work for you? Your wife?
Usually we're just trying to do the phone, and whoever I can bring out that because I live in northern Michigan, let's go hit the Jordan River. Let's go hit the Maple. Let's go hit the Sturgeon. We can be on the river in 20 minutes if it's a nice enough day, and we don't have to put a whole day into it to get a 20-minute video. Sometimes I've enlisted the help of my daughter. She hates the fact that we got to do one of these funny little fishing videos, but this is kind of my way of, I can't put a rod in your hand so you can touch it and feel it to elicit that I want to go buy a rod, but I need to do something to help you salivate a little bit before dinner and want to go check out something. So hopefully after this, you check out TFO and find out what TFO rods are coming out. And then the more that people do that, obviously they start seeing it show up in their feed. Right. And that's also why I teamed up with Fish Print Shop. I don't have the print with me right here, right now. It's at the cottage because I want to hang it up on a wall. It's a fish cottage, right? But Fish Print Shop will do a replica of a fish that you caught. And in the bottom corner of it, they will put the information where it was caught, what you caught it on, estimated weight and size by doing the what do you call it?
The field notes.
Yeah, they do field notes, but I'm trying to figure out how they estimate the weight by your measurements.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they do that.
There's a formula for each species, but they're gorgeous reproductions. And I would love people to tag True North Trout and Temple Fork Outfitters and Fish Print Shop with a picture of a fish that they caught on a TFO rod. And the winner of January freshwater contest will get their own Fish Print Shop print of that fish with the field notes. In January, we're going to be running the same contest, but we're going to do saltwater. I think it's just a really good collaboration with Mike from Fish Print Shop, get him a little bit more exposure, and myself as well. And it's January. What are we doing? Right. We can look back and see what we did back in 2020, and it doesn't have to be a 20-inch fish. It could be a 12-inch gorgeous whatever fish that you caught that you had a special memory with, and that's what really counts.
Yeah, Mike Emerson's been on the podcast before, and when I call him, and we still talk every once in a while, and from the time he picks up the phone until we hang up, we laugh almost the entire time. Literally, almost the entire time, we're just laughing. But, I've got a picture of a trout in my office upstairs. It's the only trout my wife will let me hang on the wall. Because it's just it's a piece of art, and it has the field notes. It was a big rainbow that I caught downtown Newega under the train trestle, right down there. It was actually low enough that I could wade, because usually it's pretty high water, and I was able to pull a really nice rainbow with my father-in-law, and it was just a very meaningful moment to me, and Michael printed that off for me, sent it up. Then my boss took his kid on to my old boss, he took his kid out to a Boy Scout camp, and his son caught a nice largemouth bass, and it was this really special time between him and his son. And I called Michael up and said, hey, I want to order a largemouth bass, and he's like, oh man, don't worry about it. Don't pay me. I'm going to just take care of it for you, And I was like, sure, man, I really appreciate that. It was very generous of him to gift that to me, But I'll tell you what, his son has that hanging on his wall over his bed, and his son was 6 years old at the time. He will never forget that. And the field notes, the date that he caught it, the size. I mean, it's a father-son memory that he has, and I can't say enough good things about Print Fish Shop and what Michael's done for the podcast too. So that's really cool that you guys are teaming up and doing that together.
I totally agree. And that's that memory that kid has. He's going to carry that thing off to college and hang it on his wall, and he's going to have it at his first apartment. And he's going to have it at his house. And it is, like you said, it's a work of art. And my wife got mine framed, and it has the old antique barnwood, and it just looks classy. And my wife's the same as yours. We don't want to have dead fish hanging on our walls, but that's a cool piece of art that looks good in our living room. And people walk in, and I think there's something to be, I have a picture of the fish that I caught. It was a 26-inch hex fish. It was big. But when you actually see it life size on the actual print, it gives you the reality check of, whoa, that's I can put my hand around that tail. That's a big, and you see the adipose, it's the size of your thumb.
Yeah.
I totally agree. There's something about, I think it's classy and it's cool, and it's a great conversation piece. And Mike is just a great guy. I've always been happy working with him. And he's, like you said, he's always making you smile or laugh.
Yeah, we laugh. We have a good time. He's in the financial business too, so that's my background. So we just laugh about that kind of dumb stuff, and so it's just always a good time.
Right. Cool. Also, if anybody has suggestions on what they would like to see us do on YouTube, send me an email at flyfishbcause@gmail.com or make a comment on the YouTube page. I try to follow through on comments, and be sure to include your address, and I'll send you a Mike Williams True North Trout decal, and drop your name when we do a video. I have a tips and tricks column too, where we're trying to do little things like where I use address labels and put them on fly boxes. So if I lose a fly box, hopefully somebody will send it to me. I also have like 101 uses for pool noodles in fly fishing. I think you've seen my pool noodle, but
yeah.
You'll know my place on the river when you go by and you see a pool noodle sitting at the bottom of the river with a fly on it. So if you need a fly, take a fly, have a fly, give a fly kind of thing.
Yeah, the Koz Flybrary.
Yes, I can't wait to have you at the cottage, and it'll be nice for coffee in the morning. I think honestly, as much as anybody fishes and wants to be on the river, there's a certain amount of invaluable lessons that one can gain just from sitting and watching the river. And I hope in the next 5 years, I'm a better angler for being there more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also hope to fish more as well. It's not going to be always guiding. I want to go play and enjoy what we have in Michigan. I think that's the other thing that COVID taught me too, is I got to fish more myself, and it was a lot more enjoyable. I think I had more good memories this year actually grabbing a rod and fishing myself.
That's awesome, because a lot of times guides don't get to fish that often. They end up, everyone else is fishing, So
correct.
Now
that's the silver lining for sure.
I'm going backwards. I went from the 5-weight, from 8-weight to the 5-weight. Now I'm down to a 3-weight now.
But you came from Texas,
right?
So it wasn't backwards. I get a lot of fly shops south of Michigan that think that 6-weights should be the combo starter pack because they fish bass mostly. And I think today's fly rod with the high modulus graphite and the Kevlar and the componentry that we use on your average 5-weight can do what a 6-weight could do 10, 20 years ago. I think that this year I'm going to use a 4-weight a lot more because the 4-weight LK Legacy casts like a dream. And it's not going to, most of the daytime fishing that you do, you're not hooking into 25-inch browns. Right. So that 4-weight is going to be able to handle everything up to 20 inches. It all depends on the angler too, and how you manage and maintain your line and your leader, and how you pay attention to what you're doing. Right.
Yeah. I fell in love with my 3-weight in catching small rock bass up in Lowell, and small mouth bass, smaller. And I just want to go smaller and smaller. And I'd love to catch some nice brookies on that small rod too.
There's a certain, it's definitely a pleasure spot with the 3-weight and brook trout. There's nothing better than that. I don't think. It's when we fished with Joe Cermelli with hook shots and we had our daytime trip, he's like, if just getting out with a pocket full of flies and one rod, your little 3-weight, you're just getting back to the basics. You're catching little brook trout, and they're 8-9 inches long, maybe at best, but they're so gorgeous and they're so willing to play that it's hard not to walk away from a day like that smiling. And you're not like, oh, my shoulder's killing me. I've been casting an 8-weight with an 8-inch double deceiver all day long. It's like just little tight roll cast fish. And it's a lot of fun. Hard to deny the excitement you get from a 3-weight brook trout day.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I tell you what, Koz, we're going to put your links down below, and also your email address, so if people want to reach out to you to find out more about your YouTube channel or with suggestions or TFO or anything like that, they'll be able to reach out to you. But you also have a website as well. It's truenorthtrout.com?
Correct. Yes.
Now, is that True North Trout? Now, was that named after a certain book that you read, or how did you come up with True North?
I didn't come up with it. Another gentleman out of Traverse City actually had it before me, Jordan Lindbergh, and he runs e-fulfillment services. which also does crematory services in Michigan and in Florida. But he was getting towards the end of his run. He did a lot of work with like Ted Kramer and the guys from Northern Angler. And he was looking for somebody who, he found me because I was president for the TU chapter in Petoskey, and he wanted somebody who had their thumb on the pulse of what was going on in Northern Michigan. And he basically said, I want you to have this and carry it on and take it to where it is today. I think when I first started it, that was 2009. Facebook was still a baby, or I hadn't really gotten into it yet. And that's when I first started. And I obviously somewhere around 5,000 followers. And back then it was like 60. So it's definitely been a good learning experience for me, because it was primarily a blog, and I don't like writing. And my wife said that I should do it just because committing yourself to actually doing that helps you become better. And I would agree.
That's awesome.
Although I have her as my editor, so she goes through and makes sure that I don't do a whole lot of. She's like, you capitalize the funniest things and you spell a lot of weird words. I'm like, that's just fly fishing, dear. It's Great Lakes and fresh water and salt water and rods. You whatever, but no, it's been a great experience and a lot of fun. And of course, you get to meet a lot of cool people in the industry,
Sure.
Whether they're doing stuff like this, or they're artists, or they're fly rod guys, or they're bamboo guys, or they're designers, or they're fly tires. It's just cool to meet people that we all have so much in common as far as passions go. I think we need to unite a little bit more and join forces and become the hall of justice for fly fishing and for trout, or whatever. It's
sure.
not just trout, and it's not just fly fishing. I think it's the resources. We all work for the rivers, right? The rivers are our boss.
Right. That's amazing. Well, thanks a lot for hanging out with me, Koz, and people can check you out at truenorthtrout.com. Also,
thank you. Sorry we went over our time.
No, it's no problem at all. No problem at all. I'm trying to make sure I value your time, but thanks for hanging out with me, Koz, and I really appreciate all you've done for the podcast and just introducing me to people, even like as you held up the sticker with Mike Williams Art. I mean, he's been on the podcast, with Green Bus Designs, and Mike Emerson.
Another stellar dude, Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice because you meet these people and you're like, I feel like I've known you my whole life. It is a very odd thing. I mean, this past summer I go to Texas and meet a bunch of people that I've only met online through the podcast and stuff, and they're all like my brothers. It's just a very.
When we have that first fly show, that table at whatever hosting hotel is going to have a whole bunch of guys with beers and coffees and having a good time catching up on exactly what you're talking about right there. We're all connected. It's like 5 degrees of separation, but we're all brothers, degree 1 separation,
Hey, question for you. How long have you been sober now?
April 15th will be 20 years, because I cleaned up in 2001, and it's 2021. It's crazy.
That's crazy. We just got a new sponsor, Athletic Brewing, that makes non-alcoholic beer.
Really?
Yeah, and low-calorie, non-alcoholic beer. I'm gonna send you some.
I won't play that game.
No? Okay.
No, it's near beer, and it's just an excuse to kind of like fake like you're faking it, but not really. And I did that at one time, and I bought Sharps and I bought that other stuff, and I'm like, you're just kidding yourself. You're one glass away from a slip, and you're kind of like, somewhere in the back of your brain, you're kind of making it acceptable. And I've completely flipped that switch, and that's why I love Sandhill Coffee. And even this weekend we stayed at the cabin, and Sam brought some of the Black Rifle coffee. Wow, that stuff was amazing too.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very happy and love my life.
Well, but we weren't planning on going into that whole conversation about sobriety, but actually I told my buddy, I was like, I'm going to talk to Koz tonight on the podcast. I'm interviewing Koz, and he was like, man, that's really cool. He goes, you have to have him say something about sobriety, because he has a friend who's fly fishing that's struggling or had just recently hit rock bottom, and is just coming out of that. Don't mean to bring the heavy at the end of the podcast episode, but What words of encouragement do you have? I mean, for those fly anglers who may be struggling, and I know maybe kind of a weird question, but I mean, 20 years is no joke, and that's not an easy thing. It maybe get easier today than it was 20 years ago, but I mean, what was that like, those first, and what can you tell people?
I ran into a buddy in the program today, and we won't mention names, but him and I were talking about somebody else who committed suicide last week, and that person wasn't active in the program, but I knew that they had tried a few times and maybe they didn't reach out. But I've had people call me from Utah, from Colorado, and just like out of the blue, hey, I just need help. And I'm like, first of all, hang up the phone and go find somebody that you can go have a cup of coffee with that has experience, that has done this, because I can't help you 2,000 miles away from here. I can give you advice, but you really got to get honest and true with yourself and get to the heart of the issue. And I think this whole COVID thing, what a terrible time to try to get sober. I helped somebody at the beginning, and if I was in the industry and I was 22 years old and they just gave me a $600 check every week to stay home, play PlayStation and drink beer, I would be on a high road, fast, spiraling down out of control, as faster than Mach 5, you know? So it's a very difficult time, and obviously meetings aren't as accountable right now because they're virtual, like we're doing right now. So I'll go to a meeting and you can see somebody in their pajamas, and you see somebody picking their nose, and you see somebody that just they're not really 100% in it or
right.
there.
Right.
But my advice is surround yourself with people who are strong in the program, and you don't have to believe in AA. Let AA believe in you. Let other people help you and believe that you can do it. My younger brother is in Grand Rapids, and he's been homeless for a while because he won't quit the demons that are inside him and what he's going through. But he had 3 toes amputated this winter because he got frostbite. And if that's not a wake-up call that you're hitting close to bottom, he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to quit and admit that he needs help. And we've helped, and we're looking to help more. And it's some people, you just got to know. You got to know where to go and when to help, and help when you can. And got to be ready. You got to be willing, and it's the toughest part. But if anybody needs help, obviously, please reach out to me, and I'll try to help you get in contact with people that can help you.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, cause, and I really appreciate our relationship, and you've always been eager to help and willing to help me out, and got nothing but good things to say about you and True North Trout, man. So thank you. Oh, and you've helped me avoid some weird guests on the show too. So
thank you, brother. It's a pleasure knowing you and fishing with you as well.
All right, man.
We need more love out there like that, I think.
We do. Well, thanks a lot, Kaz. I really appreciate you hanging out with us, and you have a great night.
Hey, you too. Take care, brother.
Well, Bill, thanks for hanging out with me this week.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Good times. Bill, every time we hang out, I have a good time. But this is an afternoon recording.
This is.
We're not our crisp. It's not the crisp
No coffee
stuff.
because I want to sleep tonight. And it's late in the afternoon.
It's like it's 4:45 in the afternoon.
Yes.
We're both tired, but that's okay. That's okay, Bill.
Nothing wrong with that. No.
Nothing wrong with that. Like I said before, if you're on the YouTube channel, please go click below. Also check us out on our other pages.
Rumble.
Twitter, Instagram, Rumble. Not Parler.
Well, you never know. By the time this comes out, Parler might be back.
I don't think Parler's coming back, brah.
We got to do a Gab.
We got a Gab? What is Gab?
Yeah. Gab is like Parler. It's like a Twitter. Only there's no app, and still free for the moment.
Who uses Gab? By the time this airs, it probably won't be.
Gab's taken down.
We'll set up an account, and 2 days later. See, that's the problem. We're on the. That's
the
what happened to
death.
Parler. We got on there, and then it was my sombrero that ruined the whole thing.
No bueno.
No bueno. Bill, any final thoughts this week?
Oh my gosh, I was not expecting this. I should have better prepared.
Every week when we come in, I'm going to ask you the same question. Bill, what else you have anything left? You don't have any final thoughts, and you don't not even any parting words.
No. I'm sorry. This is embarrassing.
Unreal, bro. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week. And until next time, go fishing.